Everybody, this is Perch. And a couple weeks ago, I don't recall, whenever the video came out, a bit ago, it was recorded several weeks ago. But I guess by the time this video plays, it'll be several weeks as well. Um, there was a letter around something they would like to see happen with Superman. Basically, it's Superman would snap, go crazy, start killing and murdering people, and worse. The ass got super graphic in kind of weird ways about what they wanted to see Superman do. And I did the video talking about kind of that particular situation and kind of why it would break the hero, and is that really what people want? Um, but the other thing that I didn't mention there that I thought I'd mention here is kind of some of the overused things that are going on in comics, and by conversely, some of the underused things that are going on in comics. To me, the idea of the superhero going bad has become an overused trope by far. It's been done. It's been done a lot of times. What if this character, but dark and grim and gritty, is like I said, they've done it to death, and so much so that I'm not sure how much new ground there could possibly be to cover in this entire scenario. I don't think there's much that could. I just think it's over at this point. So the other, I guess it gets to the other half of that, which is the underused. What's underused in comics? And I think as I was thinking about this, I got to kind of why I think a lot of people pine for the 80s and the 90s. And that is relatively straightforward, done in one or done in 3 to 6 storytelling where the heroes got to have an adventure. They were, maybe there's some things going against them, but we got to the core and spirit of the characters. We got to see, for example, if I'm looking at the Fantastic Four alone, who've had many great adventures and also plenty of terrible ones. Um, Imagine a Fantastic Four story where Reed Richards is not having to make some morally compromising choice, where Reed Richards' scientific curiosity is not alienating him from his family, where Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman, is not being kind of undervalued, underrated by villains. I was reading the Fantastic Four story that came out with I guess it's out in a week or two. I don't know, but I got some advances, and it's for this AXE tie-in. And Sue Storm is basically there's what is it the Midas daughter Oblique. Anyway, the villains are breaking into the Baxter Building, and guess who they undervalue? Guess who they don't take seriously? Sue Storm. Now, one of the things that John Byrne did back in the 80s, so literally 30 plus years ago, was establish that of all the Fantastic Four members, Reed, Sue, Johnny, and the Thing, that Sue's power potentially was the greatest of all of theirs, of the four. That her power was the one that could inflict the most kind of crazy damage. If she ever cut loose, she could pretty much wipe anything out with her powers. And we've seen comics showcasing this fact of people undervaluing Sue Storm, or Sue Richards, I should say, Susan Richards, undervaluing her, and basically discovering, much to their dismay, that Sue Storm is actually a badass and can pretty much beat the shit out of anybody. That's been an established storyline they've done again and again. So imagine a Fantastic Four comic, where, it's just an adventure of the four family members, where there's a threat, and they've got to team up and defeat the threat and use their powers together as family to get that done. Now, you might say that that's a pretty boring, we've seen that before story, but here's the crazy part. It's been a while since we've seen that. Even though Dan Slott was meant to kind of bring back some classic Fantastic Four stories, that's what he promised us, we actually didn't get that many of them. We got a lot of stories where, Reed bad things are happening to Reed because he's, thought about, done too much, or, Johnny Storm's going to be wrecked forever, or Franklin Richards going to get his power saved. Basically, we got these kind of status quo changing stories, but we didn't get a lot of stories of just the Fantastic Four as a team, as a family, going out and doing family adventures. The closest we've got to that in the last 15 years or so has been not the Fantastic Four, but actually the Incredibles doing Fantastic Four-like adventures as a different family. I think imagine an Iron Man story where he wasn't hitting rock bottom, where he wasn't losing all of his wealth and his technology and his hubris was turning upside down. Imagine a story where Captain America, I've said this before, just got to go on some globe-trotting adventures. Imagine a story where the Flash had to use his superpowers. Actually, we get that out of the Flash type. My point here is one underused story type in comics today is just an iconic, simple story featuring the hero themselves, featuring the characters doing what they do best, just being kind of the core of who they are. Just like there's been an overuse of violent takes on characters. What if the superhero turned bad? There's been an underuse of just the core IP that the companies have going with the comics themselves. To me, the most obvious money that you could make as a comic publisher right now would be to take your stories and just have a Spider-Man adventure story, Spider-Man being Spider-Man, have Captain America being Captain America, have Wonder Woman doing Wonder Woman is another one where they just need a simple damn story featuring Wonder Woman tackling a villain doing something like less thought. It's weird to pitch for that. Like what we really need is less thinking, because actually telling a good adventure story does require decent amount of talent and a lot of thinking. So it's not quite that. It's not as simple as just saying turn in something stupid. Frankly, I think that's why we have the stories we have today, because comic writers believe that if they were to just turn in the iconic, basic story of the characters being themselves, that it would be too boring, too predictable, too dumb. But quite frankly, I think it would be the opposite of predictable. If you got a comic story where Fantastic Four as a family just had to team up and save the world in some kind of crazy sci-fi adventure, that'd be great. That would be extremely unpredictable because no one would see that coming today. They'd be waiting for but here's how we're going to change the powers forever. Or, here's how we're going to show that the Fantastic Four, even though they have these powers, can get caught up in their own hubris. There would be lots of reasons why it wouldn't get to just be the iconic story that it needs to be. The funny part is, I think those stories would be easier to adapt into movies. I think those stories would be more likely to cross-sell to a bigger audience. And here's the crazy part. What if manga? We hear a lot about mangas outselling US comics, and manga has good crossover appeal. And one of the things one of the reasons why manga does so well is that they can throw manga on a shelf, and people who have no previous comic reading history, no previous kind of connection, pick it up and go for it because it's easy entry. It's very easy to just read manga. What if the stories that you're seeing in manga right now actually bear a lot of resemblance to 80s storytelling of comics? What if that's true? I think it might be true. Because one thing that's true about a lot of the manga that is popular, especially the Demon Slayers, My Hero Academia, JoJo, some of these other titles, Berserk, they're pretty simple. And the characters, even though they do evolve, even though there's complexity, they also tend to stay to their iconic selves. I'm a big fan of One Piece. You look at the characters in One Piece, they tend to stay pretty aligned to to their kind of iconic renditions of those characters. Luffy has evolved a lot from episode 1 to episode 1000, but the core of Luffy is still very recognizable in his actions and his behavior. Same thing with almost all these characters. They tend to be very similar to the characters they've always been, and that's part of the charm and appeal. Anyway, I think that's the magic here. I think that's um, the big missing piece that you have in a lot of comics today is if they just stick to kind of their core nature, their core attributes, they tend to do great, or they would do great. And so, if you're looking, if you're if you're mainstream comics, maybe that's your secret. Go for iconic, go for the basics, and nail it. Anyway, food for thought. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course. And thanks for listening.